There's all this talk about adding AI services and stuff to platforms. Let me ask you this first, Tony. In your extensive, illustrious career in the internal developer platform as a service, platform area, I don't know what you'd call it. What I feel like the term service is unhelpfully overloaded, but I don't know what else to use. You know what I'm saying, of course, because we're colleagues, but what is this thing, service?
Yeah. Well, even if we're colleagues, I would say it's a good question. We should probably hash this out. Yeah. I don't know. I've never really tried to overcomplicate it. I think you can, but for me, as someone who ran an internal platform, I would consider a service, at least from my purview, as something that was typically, published with sort of this hope or anticipation that others would get to use it or benefit from it or kind of integrate it. So separate maybe from, like, I guess the question is it different than an API, right? And
yeah, interesting.
And I would say probably yes, because I think a service, typically API focused, at least in terms of how it's exposed, but I think it encapsulates a lot of the stuff sort of behind the API as well.
Right. I would so yes and / but I think the API is often, not always, but often how you access a service.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Like, and so in that sense, it can seem like services are a bunch of APIs. But yeah, like I like where you're going with that. I mean, I like I said, I find it difficult to define it, and so I always will say the word service, and I'll be like, like a database or a messaging system, or like now, adding in inference, adding an AI that you can query, and so it is. I don't know, and then if I'm feeling punchy, I'll say like middleware, and see if that, as they say, resonates with people. But
yeah,
I
would say for me, in my experience, again, with my sort of the circumstances that I was in my position, this typically would be data, messaging, all the middleware kind of stuff that you were mentioning, right? Authorization, but we would also have logging, a bunch of stuff. So I think it depends. But typically, for us, it would be things that, with the intent of being reused by a lot of folks.
I think that angle, you've mentioned a few of these things, that starts to get, in a platform sense, what makes a service is not only is it, a piece of middleware, but it's a lot of what the platform is doing, like making it easy for a developer or developers to get a hold of it and use it. And what comes with that is basically installing it. That's even the wrong word in a platform, but whenever a developer wants to use it, making sure it's, I guess people say, provisioned, making sure it's set up, and then controlling the access to it, and all of that kind of stuff that would come with in a non sort of platform world, come with well, we used to have just a computer sitting here, and now we have a service running on it. All of that stuff in between there tends to be, I think. And then, of course, the managing it in production and monitoring it, and all of that kind. Or I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this, but I think people call that all observability. Is that just like a hand wavy term for managing it in production?
I think it's more than that, but it's a good. Well, I don't want to say layman, because that sounds like, negative or insulting. No, I think that's generally speaking, that's fair. But I do think from a platform perspective, there's a lot more that goes into that, potentially.
Into observability, you mean?
No, I mean beyond observability.
Oh, like all the stuff I was talking about. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. But yes, I would say you are caring and feeding and babysitting and keeping a thing up and running and available. Yeah, for sure.
It's helpfully inaccurate to be brief and comprehensive.
Yeah.
So on that, now that we have got a helpfully inaccurate definition of a service,
Right.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
I think what I was thinking about since we talked last on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Amsterdam time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, live streaming, except probably not for the next couple of weeks because it'll be on vacation, but that's fine.
Yes.
Is so, you talk about, not you, but one talks about like a platform. I think you could say VINs. It provides these services, developers use them. But I'm curious about that from an empty computer to now we have a service. Like if you're running a platform with your team, and I the wacky developers, I come at you. I don't know if I'm going to come at you, but I'm having lunch with you, and I'm saying like, we got to start using we want to start using AI, generative AI in our application to not only do we want to add just like a generic chat thing, but we also want to like in our application, we want to have it start. I'm not going to come up with an example. Just we're gonna prompt it and have it do some AI stuff for our app, whatever. And as a platform operator, you're also kind of like, listen, I don't care what you're gonna do with it. Not my job, right? But
yeah.
So given that, like what is going to go on then as far as like we need to be running, we want to run just like, I want to make a call to an API, as you say, or I don't even know. I'm running in the platform and I'm going to be like, give me some AI. like what's the whole process that the platform team does to bring that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it used to be simpler but more work, in the sense that like you would have one small team that would just try to do all of these things. But I think there are so many of the things now that the platforms have gotten smarter. I think we were chatting a little bit before, but modular. So for example, I think there's these there's the ability for teams that specialize in things to add things to the platform and then make them
Right.
available, right? And so what I see a lot of companies doing is they have some sort of like AI responsibility group or some AI innovation group. But if I was a platform team, what I would do is I would immediately partner with someone in the organization, like we mentioned earlier, that's trying to do a thing. And then I think what we would do is to partner and say, hey, like let's leverage the platform to make these things discoverable and safe and monitored. And so you kind of want to programmatically automate and expose those things. So you want to take all the guardrails and codify them and automate them and make them available sort of as APIs, and make them self-service. And so typically that groups probably has their own plans for how they're going to expose. And typically that's like a portal or a ticketing system or a web page that someone can go to. But I think with if you have a platform, those things can be done in a much easier and more discoverable way.
And so it seems like from if I keep playing the role of the application developer, people, team, entity, like what I sort of want is some way of not like if I think the way that you do a Spring application, like a Java application, basically, if you in a Spring application, if you want to use a database, what you do is I prefer using the XML file because I'm old. You could also use a YAML file. But so you open up your POM file, this XML file that says like, this is what my project is. Here's all the dependencies I have, the libraries that I use for it. Here's like the name of it. And then you have another file that's like the properties for your application. And in those properties, you can say, for example, I want to use a Postgres database. And at that point, and you can also pass it you can tell it, there's a bunch of defaults for this, but you also can put a secret, however you want to manage it in your environment. You can put it somewhere else, but you have a secret that basically is the way to log into your database, and then you can use it. And if you're connecting to a database remotely, you can do all sorts of stuff, but you basically put in like the IP address or the URL, the way to get to it, and a secret, and then And then you have like your Spring framework that is like handling all of the how your program goes back and forth between the database, so you don't have to do that by hand. And then it just sort of like, because through those property definitions, it's sort of like all automatically works, right?
Yeah.
Assuming you have the database set up, right? Now, out of band, if I didn't have a platform, out of that band I just talked about, I would have to go like read some docs and probably like, I'm gonna have to set up a server and then figure out how to install Postgres on it, and then I've got to like open up the ports and do all. So I'm basically, as a developer, I'm just setting up a server with a database running on it, and
Yeah.
that's not what a platform does. So like, what's the part that the platform team does where all I have to do is edit that property file or whatever, right? Like, or do a few command line things.
Yeah, so actually, I would say there's levels to this, and I would say that, in my opinion, I think you described two. If we were to broadly put them in like three maturity levels, I think you described what I would call two of the three maturity models. But for me personally, I think there's a level even above that that would be even more preferable. So, for example, at the sort of, we'll call it the worst case, which is the one where it's, you have to actually go set up the service yourself and install a thing or use a template or something, and then you have all the connection stuff, right? And then I think in the example that you gave, I think you're still doing a little bit more work than, for me personally as a platform owner, I would probably want developers doing. I think ideally, again, if we're talking about a large IT organization, you would want some sort of marketplace or shared services thing that allows your services to be discoverable. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, and you mentioned one already, like credentials. Like that's something that we would want to centrally ensure was happening, like in a centralized vault, for example. And so if you're using a marketplace where everything can be automated, that just ensures that that stuff is happening. And the example for that for a developer would be even easier. They would just go to the marketplace, say, hey, I want a database of this size. Like all the credentials and stuff would be stored, and then you would just bind your app to that service, and you're using it. And so there's like even less configuration required.
And what there's a lot to run through there, or let's say you just kind of stroll through. So I think the, as you say, the marketplace term is like I think it's kind of widely used, but it's a relic of the remember the API economy and
Yes.
platform stuff of the 2010s, which is fine. You could also call it, if you want to go back even further, you call it a service catalog. You can just call it a catalog, whatever, the services that you have. I think embarrassingly, I don't know the phrase for it, but I think we even have a new name for it, which I probably should have looked up before I thought to say that I don't remember what it is. But in the Tanzu platform and in Cloud Foundry, they're called tiles, like all sorts of things, whatever you call services. So that is, it's good. I wouldn't have even thought to bring that up, but there's like, so inside an organization, you do need a marketplace. Like, what services are available? How would you even find them?
Right.
And that kind of gets to, like, I'm sure you remember when IDP stood for Internal Developer Portal, which was kind of that. It's just like finding all the stuff inside. And then it mysteriously changed to platform when the all the container people came to the IDP scene, which is probably great. Okay, so then the next thing is what, because this might be an outside-in way of figuring out how you set up like a service, but like, what does this bind mean? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I think I think if you look at services, you're typically, at least for the way, if you're going to be doing like an API first approach to this, you're abstracting the service into a few key points, right? One is like, hey, go provision the thing. Then there's this concept of, there could be some details about it, like sizing, memory, that sort of thing. But when you're binding your app to it, you're essentially, that's the connective tissue to it. So you're basically saying like, hey, like here's how you access it. This is the where it is, so that your app is aware of it and can actually make calls to that service. And so it's all the connectivity between your app and that service is done through a bind operation.
And then also, like you were saying, I mean, just to restate things, you have let's call it the how to get to it, the address.
Yes, yeah,
and
exactly.
and a better word than secrets, the credentials, so that you can log into and use it, right? Just like
Right.
where to go and how to get the credentials to get into it. And then, I mean, you said another part that I think is, I mean, I guess it I think it's considered part of binding or whatever, but is like the configuration that you need, like how big or small do you want this to be? What features do you want in it? Like what type of thing do you want? Like for going to our AI, our I think you're supposed to say inference, so I'm going to try that out to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
I'm going to defer to you on that because I get it wrong all the time.
Right. I think inference means not training the model, but asking the model
Asking it
things.
questions, yes.
And then it generates text back at you, and then you can just default to calling everything AI and whatever.
That's what
So
I do.
maybe we should just do that. Yeah. So for example, when binding to an AI service, I mean, at the very least, you would say which model you want to use, right? Like I want to use like the OpenAI one. I want like a Llama one. I want like an Anthropic one. Whatever model you want to use, like that would be part of the configuration that you would have. And then even within those models, you would specify which model. I don't know what you call these things, but which one that you want. Do you want a big one, a little one, like whatever? But I would imagine also in like you're saying, with if you're binding to some sort of data store, you would say how big you wanted it, like the performance characteristics that you wanted, all of that stuff. That, I mean, this is classic platform as a service stuff where as a developer, you're not really saying the exact thing that you want, although you can. But I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when you specify a service from a platform perspective, you're trying to make it so the developer tells you like the type of service they need. Like, I need to be able to store files that are 500 gigabytes, and then you can kind of sort out what's behind it. I don't think it actually works that great in practice. You probably do end up saying like, I need this exact type of car with these tires and these rims and this internal thing.
Yes, yeah.
But it's at least a thing to go towards.
No, this brings up a really good point. So I think if you look at the role of a platform team, one of them, obviously, I have to be careful with how I say that. So like a platform team running the platform, right? But again, there's going to be modular pieces that other groups can sort of like tack onto this platform, right? So for example, if we take this, most companies have a data organization or database organization they could be running their own databases, or it could just be a support function, right, for other databases, that live elsewhere. It depends. Or, the business units running themselves or whatever. However, I think the key thing is there's this notion of determining which one you want. But I think as a centralized platform team, this is where we get into, you want to have patterns sort of pre-approved that, generally speaking, fit the most use cases within your company, right? So like whether you adopt the 80-20 rule or whatever that is, because you want to minimize the number of sort of new processes, right? Like this notion that we have to do a full review of some bespoke solution, like you don't want to do that over and over and over again. And so the idea is to kind of pre-approve common architectural patterns and templates. And whether that be network segmentation or data privacy or all of those concerns, like you kind of bake those in.
Right.
But to your point, right, like I think, ideally each BU or organization has an idea through their architecture groups, in collaboration with a platform team that says, hey, like generally speaking, this database, right, and you can kind of size it. Maybe there's 2 or 3 options, and then that should work 80% of the time, right, or whatever that rule is. And that just ties down all the cognitive load and figuring out the approval processes. So you would so you kind of t-shirt size things to some degree, whether that be, the hardware you're running on for your, MCP, right? Like the models. It could be how much memory you need in a cache, or it could be the size of a database. Like you just t-shirt size those things based on architectural patterns, and you make those available in the discoverable marketplace.
Yeah, you brought in another thing that's really valuable that I think the platform does when you're servicing services. You're providing services. Is I saw this word "vind" in some of our internal material
Yes.
recently, and I don't know if I like it, but I like saying it. If that distinction makes sense, it sounds cool and accurate.
Yeah,
But,
I haven't incorporated it into my vernacular yet, but I agree with it because I do like the all of the sort of feelings that it like that come flooding in after you say it. You're like, oh yeah,
yeah,
like you start
like a
to build these
vending machine.
analogies with a vending machine, which
Yeah,
is really
yeah.
good. Yeah, I do like it.
It also has that thing that like I think I don't know what am I trying to say? It makes me feel a little bit smart when I use it. It's got like this slight sophistication to it.
Yeah,
But
it
it's
makes me
still
feel
kind of
relevant.
knowable. Yeah, yeah. There you go.
That's how I feel.
I guess that's a positive side effect for well-being and mental health of that.
Exactly.
Anyhow, there was another thing about the platform vending services that you went over, which I think is very valuable, which is it automates the bureaucracy.
Yes.
And automates the bureaucracy in that you make a decision about we have access to this AI or this database. Well, I'll just say service, and we've gone through the process with whoever the people are, security, governance, probably some centralized enterprise architecture groups, centers of excellence, whatever they call themselves.
Right.
And hopefully we've also asked the developers for some input. And also the platform team who is probably going to be running part of it. And we've kind of all agreed on, as you say, these t-shirt sizes. And so we don't have to have that discussion every single time a new application wants to use it.
Correct.
And so all of that has been automated. And you look at examples like I remember the when the U.S. Air Force and the Army, the U.S. Army, like talked about using a platform. They would say this is great for auditors because then whenever you release a new version of the software, you don't have to audit everything down to the dirt, right? Like you've agreed. They call it the AOT, which is authority to operate. I probably messed that up.
I don't remember, but yeah.
But yeah, and that same thing applies in an enterprise where like if you imagine that scenario where I, the developer, had to go and install my own database and server, now we got to take care of that, right? But here, it's all taken care of. So that's good. So maybe another way of like getting at this big question is, so let's say I don't. I've proven this to be the case. I'm kind of skipping over part of it, but like me, the developer, I need a different t-shirt size, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe I have 3 arms and I need a t-shirt that has a 3rd armhole. And so now how does the platform team go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think typically what the platform team would do is work with whoever the authority is on that, and that could be a board or it could be a different organization. So, for example, for us, let's say it was the data organization or the database team, whatever you want to call it. They could maybe have a security expert already on the team or what have you. But anyway, you work with them, and I think that's the key point is as a platform team in theory and ideally, there's really nothing for again, as me running a platform, there's no extra work for me to say, hey, that thing is supported or not. Like it's a part of the abstract that's there, it's supported, it's just a different t-shirt size. Most of the concern there is going to be on the people that know a lot about databases. Like it's going to be their input and their oversight and the guardrails that they care about that is the most important part. And so I think, but as a platform owner, where we kind of come in is, making sure that that thing can't find its way into the system without that team being okay with it. So I think like we talked about team topologies, I think in a previous episode, like whenever you have a lot of folks that have to collaborate, that is slow and takes time. But ideally, you come out of the other side of that with decisions that can then be codified and automated and backed with APIs and services, to your point, so that we don't have to like drill down into that nuance and detail every time. So for me, I would work with the database team, for example. I would say, hey, like this is what developers are asking for. maybe you have a number of inquiries, you can, talk to them about it. They could say, hey, like, no way, and here's why. Or, yeah, that's totally fine, but it's going to cost more. Just change the rate card, do, whatever. So, and then you make that available. They could say, we're okay with teams using this. It's approved. The architecture works. It's secure, but it's very expensive and it's only for niche use cases. So before a team does this, like, this is add in like one more little approval process or approval check before making it available. So there could be that back and forth that happens, but I would work with the team that's the authority on that.
Right, right, and hopefully, I mean, it's in this situation, and probably most of them. I mean, the platform team is more acting as, I don't know a better phrase for it, but kind of like a pass through, just sort of like a gate. Like the data team might actually be, is probably actually running the databases and, like, making sure they're doing well and whatever the case is. And
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, this kind of gets to, platform can be a fraught term, because in like a strategy sense, you have a platform usually means, I forget the term. I forget so many things, as I'm always disclaiming. I should just pretend like I don't forget them. I think that's a successful way of living. Or not publicly saying I forget them. But you have it's like a multi-face platform, and things like Facebook and Google and eBay are these multi-face platforms where you're the centralized thing, and, like, I guess Facebook is an easy one. You've got users who are posting stuff, and then you have advertisers who want to advertise to them. And that's why it's this platform for multiple things and other entities acting on it. But in this case, the platform thing also does apply, because you've got multiple things going on. One, you have the database team who is metaphorically trying to sell their product into a marketplace.
Yes.
And the marketplace, the customers are the developers using it. And so there is, I mean, with, like, what, if that's accurate, like, what percentage of the time do you think the platform team spends talking with the service owners and providers? Like, that's an aspect that doesn't get discussed very much, like what that relationship and that kind of working relationship is like.
I would say it's something that it's a lot in the beginning, but in theory, as time goes on, that should get less and less and less, and to the point where almost never, until some new service needs to be enabled or provided, like
Right.
some new capability. But typically speaking, that's the brilliant thing, right? When we go back to the team and topology stuff, that's how it's working, is that human interaction between verticals is not something that you want to be happening frequently, because if it is, that's a bottleneck in the system. So the platform, it's working when you don't have to talk to those people often. And the same thing about infrastructure. Like, I remember running the platform, like, we almost never talked to our infrastructure folks. Like, we had capacity monitoring and planning. There would be a small conversations when it was time to order more hardware, like that sort of thing. But generally speaking, everything just worked. There was clear lines of delineation, and you didn't have to talk to them very often.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a whole other service, your infrastructure. You don't usually,
Right.
I don't usually think of it as a service, but it's another provider, another sort of like actor in this whole thing. And the platform team is, like, basically mediating from the developer's perspective access to this stuff. Now, maybe the database team, they talk directly to the infrastructure people because they're off on their own area somewhere running their fancy databases.
Yes.
But at the very least, like, it would be probably a failure state of your platform strategy if your developers had to talk to infrastructure people frequently. Like that. That's kind of like, you don't want that. Like,
yeah. And that's actually one of the, what I would consider, if you were doing some sort of user acceptance testing on, like, whether or not something has been platformed, I guess. I don't know what the right word for that would be. But yeah, like, if they have to go talk to someone, then it's not. I mean, that's the whole point. So the point should be, it should be completely self-service. And if there's any concerns that some group has, those concerns have been baked into that service and the API, the questions it asks, and the responses that it looks at, and those are all pre-approved. Like, that's the whole point.
So then at like a technology layer, like how is this stuff handled? Like what is scurrying around doing all of this? Because I think we kind of discussed a bit of process, some outcomes. Another great word, maybe not as good as Vind. If Vind is the word of late 2025, outcomes is maybe like 2020. I don't know, maybe 2018. But like what like how do platforms like accomplish this? What do they do?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's on the technical side, like I probably wouldn't get too far into the weeds, one, because I'm not completely aware of all the technical things that go behind that. But what I would say is that it's a little different under the covers for each service that you have offering. And that's why the importance of having this API. So think of it this way, like it's more, the API is more of an interface. Like if you're a Java developer, right? Like an
Yeah.
interface that you would program to. And so that API, like the platform knows how to, run that API, right, and provide things to the users and so forth. So if I were a team that's creating a service or managing a service, as long as I make my service adhere to that interface, that API, then the platform knows how to interact with it. It's the same thing as like MCP, right? Like
Right.
you've just predefined a templated way of getting things like for databases, it could be size and CPU and memory and all these kinds of things. But for MCP, right, like it could be what model are you using, what hardware are you using, a shared CPU, do you have a dedicated GPU? Like there's all these other things that go into it. And so I think but the point is, once you've figured all that out, it gets exposed at that interface level. So that's up to the team that kind of owns that service to make sure they're programming or, managing their service to that interface. And then if they are, it's modular and plugs into the platform and everyone gets to use it.
Right. So essentially, if I were to give my style of summarizing, you have there's the API that the developers and the platform team agrees on, and maybe to some extent like the other side, but let's just focus on that. And probably this is where I would imagine the engineering part of platform engineer comes in. Is so if you're adding a new service, the platform engineering team has to think about like, well, we have that API, and now we need to do something so that when a developer wants to set up a new database instance, at the very least, it calls out to the databases team domain and says, "Give me a new database with these parameters." So it has to like know, like there's some scripting, some code, some automation, like and I think the important distinction over what year is this? The last, that would be, I don't know, 20 years maybe. I'm always digging to put it in a jokey way. And I wouldn't know what the answer to this is. I'm just kind of hand waving about it. So, we don't need to get super definitional or whatever, but is like eventually like there's the equivalent of someone typing some commands in the command line, right? Like it might be a configuration file that executes something that does that for you, but like eventually you're doing just some very low level install the thing, give it this configuration, and then hook it up to the API, type of work.
So I think the key thing is that's a very good point. So I think if you look at most teams today that are trying to expose a service, the mature ones, they've done a pretty good job, right? Like, so they're using infrastructure as code, Terraform or whatever they're doing, right? Cross-plane, whatever. So like they have some way of automating the construction of things with parameters, right? That come out of some template, right? But I think where it kind of breaks down without having a platform that the company is sort of used to, working with and centralizing things around, is that imagine you're in a company, right? You have thousands and thousands of developers, and going back to your IDP portal, right? Like all of these groups used to have to stand up their own thing around like, how do developers find out about our thing? Where do they go to use it? How do you keep that all up to date? And I think what a good platform does, like our platform, for example, is uh, if they've codified everything and it's all automated and it's an API, and if you can make it available on a web page, the lift to get it discoverable and usable by the platform is very small. Like it's
Right.
literally just like it is technically just a Java API, an interface that you're basically filling in the details about. And then which you may or may not already have parts of that, right? Because you've already automated things. So the difference is that instead of having to go to all these different web pages and all these things, as a developer, you would literally go to your platform and say, list the databases, right? And then they're there, and then you pick one, you pick the size, and then you bind your application to it, and now you're using it. And so there's no talking, there's no fumbling through web pages and bookmarks. Like everything is in a centralized place.
Right. And then even like, you can do this pretty much all from the command line too, right? Like with
Yes.
whether you're using in Cloud Foundry land, there's the CF command and then there's a Tanzu command, all sorts of command line things. But you can, all the steps you went through, you can say like, you can type on the command line, give me a list of the services that we have, give me a list of the different shirt sizes, as you say, for the services. And then you say, all right, I want you to provision my very own service. And it gives you a name for it with that t-shirt size. And then you get to the binding part where you're like, okay, I have this application and I want you to connect it. I want you to get them to be friendly with each other.
Yeah. I want you to create credentials. I want you to encrypt things. I want you to store it in a centralized place. And then I want the platform to automatically use and retrieve and
do that configuring for me. And again, in contrast to what you're saying is, I mean, there's a scale and a few things I want to talk about a little bit more. Like I think the probably I hesitate to say normal, but one of the major ways this is done is like you were saying, you go to some internal page, a portal. I don't, whether it's in Confluence or a wiki thing, or maybe, if you're really cool, you probably got some Notion thing or an Airtable, or if you're like stricken with just whatever, maybe a Google Doc, and like you're searching around and finding for this stuff, and maybe and how to do all of that yourself and hook it up, which is fine. And now the other distinction, the other thing on kind of on the non-developer side that you were talking about, which I find interesting given my background in systems management and stuff, is so you said the word like template, or you could call it like a script, whatever it is that like. Whenever I type those command line things, I want a database, so you have to provision it for me. Like something executes that causes the database to exist. And in the easiest case, there's probably just a little bit of code that translates between what I typed in the command line and like calling out to the database team's domain to create an instance. And then the platform has to create a record for it. And like, it's got to do a little bit of munging around of stuff. But I think there's an interesting distinction there around this word template, which it feels like the way that that's normally done is a developer is given like I don't actually know what I'm talking about here, but like a template and like a Helm chart or a little Terraform thing, and it's sort of like run this and it will provision you the database. So you're kind of like shifting the responsibility of doing that, I guess, left to the developer. You're giving them the tool, the script that they run to automate it and do it. And the distinction with the platform seems to be like you just point them at an API and they don't ever actually have this template or mess with it. Like they're not the ones who are doing the work through a script.
Yeah. I mean, so whenever I hear template, like the first thing again is that I think about is, parameters, right? And so essentially a template is all the things that are the same. So you code those and you automate them or script them. And then the parameters are the things that can be different or require, an input of some sort. And so what you want to do, again, to reduce cognitive load is ideally, again, generally speaking, the number of inputs, right, to that thing should be as minimal as possible for the developer. And so that t-shirt sizing concept. And then again, as an architecture group, you're trying to ensure that the options, that the things that you're putting out there based on the fewest number of inputs will cover the largest number of use cases. And so like that's the balancing act. And so because again, the whole point is to reduce cognitive load. And as a developer, if I only, I just need to know these one or two things, fantastic. And I can get the thing that's going to work for me, 80, 90% of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think maybe we should as our last topic. Why don't we just in you know, our verbal, no whiteboard, no fingers on the keyboard kind of way. So let's go back to that AI thing. Say you know, you're the platform person, owner, team, whatever, and we haven't really done AI stuff. We've got this group. We hired some consultants. They came in and wrote a bunch of Python applications, and they left behind some. They call it the data scientists, and they know how to run models. They're using Jupyter Notebook or whatever, and now we want to start adding. We've got like several hundred applications, and we want to start adding some of that AI stuff into our apps. And so we go to you, the platform team, and we're like, we need access to the AI.
Yeah.
And it doesn't exist in your platform. Like what are the kind of like series of events that happen so that eventually I can get to that scenario I was talking about where I'm typing on the command line. I need the AI. I need this parameter for it and stick it into my application so that I can start using it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's very similar in the sense that there's probably a very low chance that the team that's running the platform also knows everything they need to know about the AI side of things. And so they should immediately partner with the group that is doing or, sort of owning or responsible for the AI. And what I will say based on the demos and things that I've seen, the amount of configuration that goes into adding all of those parameters on the AI stuff is much higher than I would say for a messaging system or a database
it's immense.
system.
And it has a bunch of words that don't make sense.
Yes. So there are that would I would consider that a very specialized thing, right? So hopefully your group has an AI organization. So as a platform team, I would work with them. And there's a lot of things that go into it, but tokenization, data privacy, the models that you want to allow developers to use or not use. There could be, is it public? Is it private? All, like what things can you connect to?
Sure.
There's so much stuff.
And you got to set your system prompt and figure out what a temperature is and a chaos and retries, like all of this stuff.
But that goes back to that collaboration piece. So that does take some time. So if that's something that like most companies, they want to get moving with this, I would dedicate a portion of the platform team to work with that AI team. One, as I would demonstrate all of the capabilities of the platform to support this notion of exposing AI to our development community. Because what I typically see is the folks working on the AI stuff are not aware of the capabilities of like our platform, for example, and how it can actually help them sort of democratize AI within the organization and accelerate the ability to develop on that. So the first thing,
let me interrupt you there. Just I will, whether you let me or not, I guess. But like, so do you find like talking with platform teams when you're doing it on your own? Do you spend a lot of time basically just telling people what the platform team does? I mean, because that's kind of what you just mentioned is you go to these people and you say like, hey, here's what we do. Right? Like, here's how we fit into everything that we just talked about for like 30 minutes. Like, here's how we fit in and how we're basically, to use the metaphor, we're a storefront for what you, the provider, are doing.
Yes.
And like, does that consume, do you get to spend a lot of time doing that?
I would say it's not in my job title, but I would argue that, or I would, put forth that the thing that one of the best values that I think I have historically brought to companies is getting organizations within a company to talk to each other that typically don't. And so, it's again, everyone's sort of locally optimizing AI, the AI initiative will do that as well. And then also because I think the AI initiative comes from, it comes from the BU side a lot of the times. Like you'll see them kind of wanting to push the envelope a little bit sooner. But anyway, yes. So just, introducing the AI team to the platform team, say, hey, you guys have a platform. It has a whole bunch of capabilities for this.
Right.
And you guys should probably talk and figure out like where the overlap makes sense.
Right. Okay. So that conversation is gone. I mean, we're basically the whoever's responsible for the AI,
Yeah.
They know what a temperature is,
Yep.
and they've talked with the platform team, and they're like, all right, we know how we could set up, we know how we could vend AI through
Yeah.
the platform, and
Yep.
then kind of what happens after that kind of agreement? What are the next steps?
Yeah. So the next steps would be, let's say that they come out of that with a list of models that are approved, right? And that means they have accounts set up and, the security and stuff, and it's all there. So then they would sit with that group. They would sit together, whatever on the, the release day is. And then for our product, for example, they would configure that tile with all of the things that came out of that collaboration. And so, and as a developer, it would make those things available now in the marketplace, so to speak. Like, hey, like if you want to use this model, you want to use that model. If you're in production and you want to use a GPU instead of a CPU, like all of those things are now exposed. And you launch that, and the teams have access to it. I think one of the things that needs to be worked out is, if a development team has support issues. I hear this a lot. So I don't know if we have time, but the one of the concerns or the pushbacks that I hear from platform teams is their reluctance to add new things because they feel like that now they're on the hook to support all of it, whether it be
Oh,
databases,
right,
AI,
right,
and so
right.
forth. But I think it's super important to differentiate, us as the platform team providing the lattice and the framework versus the AI team that's going to handle your questions around how things work, and getting help with those things. So
Right.
but yeah, but once you do that, like, now you have these MPCs, MCP servers, right? There's clients, their applications can use those clients. They can, and it's all with services and tokenization and stuff that's been pre-approved. Like that's the whole point. Like if and you can limit that approval process to different BUs and orgs and teams as a good platform.
Mm.
So basically, in theory, well, not in theory, it's working when, as a developer, I want to say, I want to use some AI stuff, show me my AI stuff. And the stuff that comes back is the stuff that you can actually use, right? Like you don't have to go ask someone. And if you couldn't use it, it wouldn't show up. And so, like, that's how you know it's working.
Right. And so you talk to the AI people or team, and then there's this process of let's specify the plans, we could call it,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
the t-shirt sizes, and then let's also do, for lack of a more precise term, all the glue code that it takes from, a developer says I want this t-shirt, and everything that happens so that eventually, well, hopefully not eventually, so that very quickly they now actually have access to like this running like model somewhere, and
Yep.
and they can start using it. And then, so where does the like manageability, like the day two stuff fit in? Like what do the platform teams do for that kind of stuff? Because the developer
Yeah.
doesn't, in theory, see that very much.
No. So I think, again, like I think this is where, as the core platform team, their job is to make sure things are up and running, capacity management, right? There's monitoring and things like that. As you can imagine, and if the servers are running on the platform, they're probably, managing the monitoring and stuff of that. I think it depends. And the reason why I say that is you go back to the database for as an example. If that database team is provisioning, like their databases are running on some other infrastructure or other platform, for example, like they may have an ops team or run team for that versus the platform team
Right.
managing that. But in this example, right, they're to my not like that's the beauty of it is you're just making sure the platform is up and running, the tiles are up and running, right? Everything's updated and upgraded. There is some communication things, right? Like when upgrades are needed and maintenance windows and stuff like that. But there, a lot of that communication between the developer community and the platform team is handled, by the platform team running the thing. So
And now we were going over a new, even though it's very popular, highly specialized service, right?
yes,
Like doing AI stuff. I know that there are services that I think the platform team just fully owns, right? Because
yes,
they're
yeah,
simple as because they're mature or maybe just simple. And like, what does that look like when? I mean, probably, I mean, even databases are a risky one in enterprise. Not risky as in bad, but like they don't quite fit in there. I can't think of like what an example would be off the top of my head, but there are plenty of things that like you don't need a whole team to run them. You just need the thing.
Yeah, and I would say caching is a good one that I see
Oh yeah.
that
Right.
gets owned by the platform team because it's ephemeral in nature. There's less, concerns, right? And it's a very easy one to manage. And so but I think it depends. Like, so I think the answer to that is it depends on the depth of skill sets that are required and or
Yeah.
the sort of underlying infrastructure that it's running on. So, if it can be automated by Bosch, for example, there's probably a good chance that the platform team is in a good position to monitor and own that. But if it's not, then there could be a different skill set that someone else in the organization or a different team is probably responsible for. And then if that's the case, then what the platform team does is they provide the lattice and the framework for that thing being exposed and consumed, but they don't necessarily directly support it if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I would imagine the platform team could also own like registries for like dependencies and libraries that you have and containers.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess it's just a question of like staff, not only staffing, but if that's what the organization wants, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want a separate team that has operational control as well as philosophic and specifying control over like, what's in your registry and what libraries to use, or do you not, right? Like, and so it seems like, I mean, I would guess that, well, I don't know if this is entirely accurate, but the more, I'm just for lack of a better phrase, the more enterprise grade you want your services to be, the bigger the chances that there's another team running it, and the platform team is more just like this moderating like thing between developers and the service team. But either the less resources you have, or the less enterprise grade things are, just like the platform team might wholly own and run it on their own.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah, and they're all different. So and that's the thing is I think those have to be evaluated and sort of decided on a case by case basis.
Right.
And
like I could imagine with your background, right? Like if you were in retail, if you're not like a retail focused company, the platform team could just kind of own the integration to your payments platform and it would be fine. But then if you're actually like making money off of fractions of a penny by how you like, sell stuff, there's probably many teams that handle payments, and your platform team is just kind of like a pipe that passes through to them.
Yeah, and I think it brings up a good point. Like there are multiple platforms within a company. There are multiple platform teams. I think when I refer to the platform, I'm thinking of that that sort of the coming together of like runtimes and services and APIs and so there, you could have for us, we had a point of sale team that was a platform, but the services for it and the applications for it ran on our platform. And so
Right.
they had their own support team, right, that did those things. Like we just made sure our platform was up and running and all the apps on it were, not in a degraded state.
Yeah. So that like we were saying earlier, this platform term can get really confusing.
Just like services. Yes. And
right.
and
then you go to another part of the company and there's chips that are platforms and you're like, what's going on here. Right.
I think, I know that we'll probably talk about, episodes and things, but I do think it would be great to get a guest on about the AI stuff in particular.
Yeah.
And especially from the developer's point of view, I think when we demo to a lot of customers, the operator side is sort of well understood, but I think it would be great from a developer perspective.
Yeah. No, I think seeing, my dream for this kind of stuff is always like as I was kind of like walking through like an end-to-end demo of like on one side of the demo, someone sits down, I guess they could stand if they're healthier. And like their fingers are on the keyboard typing stuff. And then let's go all the way through the entire process. We don't have to go to like how you're going to split the lunch bill and all of that, but like we go through the entire process and then all the way back to like, and now it's like responded with whatever the AI responded with. And I think
Yep.
I think seeing all that stuff, and not only like one run through it, but again through the different stages of the life, is like they want the thing, so then you got to like set the thing up and figure that out, and then they get the thing, and then they make a call to the thing, and then of course you could have the thing needs to be upgraded and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But like,
yep.
I'm thinking this is probably on my long list. It's a very long list of things I will never do. But it would be interesting to like get, the Tanzu platform, our platform up, and just come up with some like rinky dink ridiculous service and see like all the work it would take or how little work it would take to be more marketing oriented.
Yeah.
To like set that up as a service or a tile or whatever we call it nowadays. And
Yeah.
that'd be interesting, because I think a lot of service talk and platform talk, or a lot of any technology talk that I have over the years, once I actually sit down and just like do the stuff, it's a lot more clear and easy to explain about what's going on. But we'll see. Speaking of, we have several weeks off, and I probably should enjoy my time off instead of learning how to set up a service and a platform. But maybe if I'm super bored, I'll read some docs.
I'm hoping I am doing some traveling, but I'm hoping I have some time, because I do want to set up my own little personal like travel agent thing. Using Gemini and ChatGPT has been great for giving me like, oh, here's what you should do, and catering all that. But now I want it to like go book the things and use my credit card, which could be dangerous for me if I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, like I do want to crack something open and then kind of build that a little bit. So I gotta find a place to do that safely.
Yeah. So. No, that stuff is fun. All right. Well, that was good. I think we got a good idea of services stuff. Now, as always, as I mentioned, aside from the next couple of weeks, we usually we stream our Tanzu Catsup on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. Amsterdam time. And I don't know if you, the viewer, have any topics you're interested in talking about, just leave us a comment. And I think eventually we will get around to having some guests on. I'm trying to avoid having the quietly sit and watch someone do a demo situation. Have something more interactive. But I think there's some areas that would be good to talk with people about, and especially even like actually get some like that scenario we talked about. That would be fun to have I used to call them back in the 2000s moderated screencasts, which was a very dorky word, but just have someone like do a demo and interrupt them all the time and be like, what did you just do there? And like just ask them little questions about what's happening.
Yep.
Badgering to learn, I think.
Yeah. And I have some legit questions, like personal, genuine questions I would love to ask some people on some of these topics. So hopefully I won't interrupt them too much, but yeah.
We'll see. Well, you can also call the interrupting learning.
Yes.
Anyone who has kids in school, they know that teachers are always saying, I wish they would ask more questions. And there you go. That's interrupting is just a rude word for asking questions. I think is what's going on there. All right. Well, speaking of that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye.
Always fun. See you, Kote.